In rare public remarks, former President Barack Obama warned that the United States is dangerously close to slipping into an autocracy under the Trump administration. The former president spoke Tuesday night in Hartford, Connecticut, where he criticized President Trump and questioned the administration's commitment to democracy. But Obama also challenged affluent progressives who were, quote, comfortable in their righteousness during his presidency.
Democracy is not self-executing. It requires people, judges, and people in the Justice Department, and people throughout the government who take an oath to uphold the Constitution. When that isn't happening, we start drifting into something that is not consistent with American democracy. It is consistent with autocracies. I think that we are dangerously close to normalizing behavior like that. We've lost a monoculture. We've lost everybody watching Walter Cronkite. We've lost everybody watching MASH or Mary Tyler Moore or All in the Family or Roots. We've lost everybody getting a Time magazine. It makes it more difficult now for us to find common ground. It makes it easier for demagogues to divide us. You could be as progressive and socially conscious as you wanted, and you did not have to pay a price. You could still make a lot of money, have a house in the Hamptons, and still think of yourself as a progressive. And now things are a little different. We now have a situation in which all of us are going to be tested in some way. And we are going to have to then decide what our commitments are. You might lose some of your donors if you're a university. And if you're a law firm, your billings might drop a little bit, which means you cannot remodel that kitchen in your house in the Hamptons this summer.
So there's been a lot of debate lately about President Obama, whether he should be more front and center. We heard from him this week, Mara, and I think he sort of said what most Democrats say about the dangers posed by Trump and the fact how hard it is to break through in this very fractured society. But I'm curious as to what you think about that last soundbite there. Yeah. His criticism of progressives, those in his own party.
Well, I think it wasn't just a criticism, it was a call to action. I think we sometimes forget that Barack Obama's beginning in political life was actually in organizing. And I really saw this as a call to action to everyday Americans, but to especially everyday Americans who are professionals, who may have some agency to speak out, whether at their job, in their community, to say, hey, democracy requires you to act now in your own personal life, to stand up for what you believe in, to say something when your neighbor is, having their rights stripped away. And I think that there is this tension between Democratic voters in particular, looking for some kind of leader to save them, when all the time Barack Obama, I think in this, is hinting at this needs to be a pro-democracy movement, and this needs to come from the bottom up.
As the Democratic Party stumbles through its resistance to President Trump's agenda, there is one resounding voice that has been largely quiet. That's former President Barack Obama. But that changed momentarily this week when he sat down for a wide-ranging conversation where he offered this warning.
Democracy is not self-executing. It requires people, judges, and people in the Justice Department, and people throughout the government who take an oath to uphold the Constitution. It requires them to take those that oath seriously. And when that isn't happening, we start drifting into something that is not consistent with American democracy. It is consistent with autocracies.
Excellent panels back. A lot of Democrats want to hear more of that.
The question I get asked more than anything else is, where are the former presidents and when are they going to speak out? Why aren't they speaking out more? I would say President Obama has actually spoken out more than any of the others. I think what you hear from them is, they want to pick their moments. They don't want to dilute the message. But as I think we know with history, you never know when that tipping point is going to come that it makes a difference.
And the argument from the other people who want to hear it more say that this is a time where you should be speaking out because of everything that's happening out there.
Yeah, they say, of course, that they believe that Donald Trump is a unique threat. Quite frankly, the Democratic Party is uniquely in disarray in a way that it's a moment for the Democratic Party that they say needs leadership that just isn't existing in the party. There's a lot of infighting. But I think we do have to just take a step back and think, during the Biden administration, were Republicans saying, we must hear from George W. Bush right now. And they weren't. They let him be, And so it is just kind of unprecedented to see Democrats clamoring for Obama, but I think it's more of an indication that the party doesn't really feel like it has any other leaders.
Yeah, and the former Attorney General Eric Holder told The Atlantic's Marko Leibovich, the thing you don't want to do is you don't want to regularize him, referring to Obama.
I think referring to Trump, actually, to normalize the
I guess he's referring to Trump. I read it as Obama.
I think
he's talking about Obama. But
the whole idea here, I think, is, and President Obama subscribes to this, President Bush does, there's one president at a time. And so they have been very consistent in their reluctance. However, it's also, if they speak too much, they become a lightning rod, and then the Trump administration is able to use them as a foil. So President Obama, in his reminded me of his job before president. He was a constitutional scholar, and he was trying to tell the students of America, the Democrats, that sort of like focus here. He does not believe he can lead Democrats out of the wilderness. If that was the case, if Democrats listened to him, Kamala Harris would have been elected, et cetera. Hillary Clinton would have been as well. But he is just trying to sort of nudge them along. But I think
this is not a time for platitudes and personal musings, veiled critiques. We have to speak about what's happening in plain language so people understand it. This isn't 2012. This isn't 2008. Those days of political platitudes are over. People need to fully understand what's happening right now. You have Democrats being arrested, being indicted, being detained, politically assassinated in a week. There are tanks rolling down the streets of our cities. There are active duty Marines on the streets of our cities. Donald Trump is tearing up the Constitution and throwing it away and spitting in our faces. So we can't sit here and be polite anymore. You can be peaceful, but the righteous anger of the American people needs to be harnessed in a way for people to understand what's at stake. And for someone like President Obama, who has so much influence and respect of millions of Americans, this is not a time to be cautious. I mean, he needs to take from the page of Winston Churchill. No, I'm sorry. He is in a position to speak plainly to the American people. Winston Churchill said there is no time for ease and comfort. It's time to dare and endure. That is the position we are in right now as a country. And I would like for Democratic leadership to speak a lot more seriously and plainly about what's at stake here.
Now, let me just say this. Y'all know I'm here to be critical of anybody and everybody if they deserve it. But it is not on, in my opinion, humble opinion, it is not on Barack Obama to clean up the mess that America has made. Chuck Schumer needs to be a little more clear, a little more forceful.
Agreed.
Hakeem Jeffries needs to be a little more clear and a little more forceful.
Agreed.
Barack Obama could have said nothing because he did his duty for 8 years and then got out there on the campaign trail after that and then got out on the campaign trail after that again. His family has been put in the crosshairs. Like, I don't think it's on, to be very clear, the first black president to clean it up.
I'm not saying it's on him, but if he's going to stick his neck out and put his toe in it, then you need to go all the way in. Like, he's in a position where people are looking, especially the Democratic Party, because of the failure of leadership by so many others who are currently in office, as you named. Now Barack Obama's out there, and he's got the opportunity, he's got the platform. If he steps up to the plate, then you know what? Maybe others will say, well, listen, if President Obama can do that, maybe I can too. There needs to be some intestinal fortitude here in this moment that we're in. We can't keep having strongly worded letters from Democratic leadership when we've got tanks rolling down the streets of our country.
I think
like,
you
this
did.
is-
I will just say, if we're calling for President Obama, I would like to see President George W. Bush.
I agree.
Because
I've said the same.
there are
I have said the
Republicans
same.
in this country who have not had the courage that Michael Steele has had.
Well, I think
no argument for me on that. We were talking about President Obama. But believe me, somebody posted something recently on social media about President Bush, and I said, where the hell has he been? He should have come out and spoken very forcefully the way he did, at least in 2020, when all the presidents got together. That's great. He's been AWOL since. He's another one. And all the other Republicans, too, that the ones that are elected in particular, who complain in the Senate dining room or in the Senate hallways to each other, but won't do it publicly, the same applies to them. Now's the time to speak up. But we were just talking about President Obama coming out, so that's why I said what I said about him.
Let's take a listen to what Brad Lander had to say today about authoritarian.
This is what we need to see. Like, there is a lot of discussion about how more needs to be seen from Obama. I think that's a fair criticism. I do. I mean, the man isn't president anymore. And the nature of U.S. politics, right? The nature of the U.S. political system is that once you've been president for 8 years, it's generally accepted that you're done with day-to-day politics, right? There have been times in the past, like back in the 1800s, former presidents would go back to Congress. You've seen presidents then serve on the Supreme Court. Like, these things have happened, but in modern American history, since FDR, after you were done being president, you were basically done with electoral politics, right? Even if you were a one-termer, you would either run again, right? Or you would go off and do whatever. From anything from speaking tours to make yourself a buttload of money to becoming a charitable person like Jimmy Carter, building houses for the homeless and doing all sorts of other charitable causes and everything in between, right? But we don't live in normal times. And I think people are demanding they see more from Obama and also critically George Bush Jr., W. Bush, because they are uniquely poised to say, look, we were president. We both did it for 8 years. We understand. We've done it and recently as well. Like, both of them are relatively recent presidents in the last 20 years, right? We understand that it's a hard job, but what Donald is doing and how he's doing it is unacceptable. And as a bipartisan thing, we feel the need to speak up, right? We feel the need to challenge the fascist transformation of the presidency. And the fact, let's be clear, like, and Bush actually plays a part of this, right? Some of the things he did after 9/11 helped pave the way for a tyrant like Trump, right? Let's be clear about that. But the fact is, both him and Obama were better faith about their powers. And while this emergency press conference from Obama is a good start, I can see why people want to see more from him and especially from Bush. But I want to see what you guys think in the comments. Do you think both of these former presidents need to take a direct fight to Trump?